in Japan. It is not workable technology. It creates much more toxic nuclear waste than was originally dealt with, and it's not economic. We have experience with attempting to reprocess nuclear fuel, and it has failed. That's why the $50 billion in this stimulus package has got to come out.
And that's one of the reasons I left. One of the reasons I left Greenpeace is because people like Harvey spread this misinformation. The French are fueling 22 of their 59 nuclear reactors on recycled fuel. Just go to Cap La Hague. They've got a huge facility there. Japan has also built a $30 billion facility to fabricate and recycle fuel. But on the point of taxpayers, every other country but the United States has state-owned electrical utilities. Canada, France, Britain, you name it. The government takes 100% of the risk on electric utilities because they are perceived as a monopoly and a national security issue. In most countries, the United States is the only place where private capital is expected to pay for electricity infrastructure, and the only reason wind and solar are being built is because of mandates and extremely high costs being paid to these technologies. It's political. If there was no subsidy for wind and solar, there'd hardly be any wind and solar. People would be building baseload power like nuclear and fossil fuels. But you know, I'm not in favor of continuing to build coal plants. I think 50% is enough. That's how much electricity in the U.S. comes from coal. And again, it doesn't make sense to charge a plug-in hybrid or run a ground source heat pump on a coal-fired power plant. It just puts the pollution somewhere else.
Harvey Wasserman.
It does make sense to run them on wind farms, and Patrick, who is Canadian, makes a good, and will not be paying, by the way, for the $50 billion bailout that the nuclear industry wants in advance here. And by the way, the Congressional Budget Office has warned that 50% of the the utilities that build nuclear plants will go bankrupt. And Patrick has pointed out, you know, that the nuclear utilities in Europe are all government-owned. All this hype about the French reactors putting out so much energy obscures the fact that these are owned by the government. It is a national socialist form of electric generation. We don't want that in the United States. And by the way, don't go anywhere near the La Hague reprocessing facility. Every country in Europe has asked France to shut down this reprocessing facility because it's such a major polluter. It has put huge quantities of radioactive waste into the water bodies around it, and every other country in Europe is asking that this reprocessing facility at La Hague be shut down. The same with Sellafield in England, and the Japanese plant also, the reprocessing plant, has tremendous problems. Reprocessing nuclear fuel is pie in the sky. We don't want this $50 billion rider stuck into the stimulus bill. People need to call their senators and Congress people and get it out. Patrick, you pay taxes in Canada. You want to pay for it up there. That's your issue. But don't tell us here in the United States that we got to pay another $50 billion for a failed 20th century technology.
Patrick Moore, your
response
on the French plant that you just recommended.
Well, first off, that's total misinformation that other countries are asking France to turn it off. It's just completely ridiculous. Most of the countries in Europe depend on nuclear energy for their electricity. Slovakia, 60%. Belgium, 65%.
That
France,
doesn't speak
80%.
to reprocessing.
Yeah, but it's the only way to get the energy out of the used fuel, Harvey, and people are doing it around the world. The United States is 30 years behind.
At huge cost. It's extremely expensive. It doesn't work. We have a $50 billion boondoggle coming down the line here. It's got to get out of this stimulus package.
Do you think that if it was too expensive, the French would have 80% of their electricity coming from nuclear?
Yes, because it doesn't work in the marketplace. The French industry is National Socialism. It's owned by the government. There is not the private money in the French industry is minuscule. The French reactors cannot compete in the marketplace.
We're going to have to leave it there. We started with Patrick Moore, so we ended with Harvey Wasserman, and I want to thank you both for being with us. Patrick Moore, co-chair of the Pro-Nuclear Clean and Safe Energy Coalition based in Boston. Harvey Wasserman, independent journalist, well-known anti-nuclear activist. This week I'll be in Atlanta at Morehouse College on Saturday morning, Washington in the afternoon. Happy birthday to Hugh Grant. I'm Amy Goodman. Thanks for joining us.